Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
The story of the property that almost never happened. Welcome back to today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Today, I am going to be sharing with you the story about my absolute favorite property in my rental portfolio that I almost never ever actually bought. So that property is actually the property that I am recording from if you are watching here on our YouTube channel, but it is my home, my dream home, my beachfront home down in the Dominican Republic. So here's how that worked out. My husband and I started buying rental properties in New York. That was where we were living, right outside of the city at the time, and it just made sense for us to buy a rental property there. We got started, as many other investors do, through house hacking. A simple idea of purchasing a multifamily property where we are living in one unit and we are renting out the other units. This made a world of difference for us financially. In New York City, we are paying so much money towards our rent. It was great with the house hack that we did on that duplex. We bought that back in 2018, and we were actually able to live for free there. We all of a sudden went from having a $2,000 a month bill for rent to nothing. Was able to cover our expenses, and that allowed us to really get our portfolio rolling. We were very fortunate to be able to buy a multifamily every single year. That was really the cadence that we worked with. But as many of you remember, back in 2020, the pandemic happened. Now, that really changed a lot of things in real estate, but it also changed things from a lifestyle perspective. The year before, we bought our first property down in the Dominican Republic. That property was a little bit different. We bought that over in the capital of the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo. Now, when most people think of properties in the Dominican Republic, they think of the beachfront property, they think of the short-term rental, renting out to expats, being able to stay here and vacation for free. And I've talked about a lot about how I get to live here during the winter months, and I use my short-term rental as that. You may have heard we actually have a bunch of lady landlords coming down to the Dominican Republic on a property tour coming soon. That is on March 21st. So if you would like to join us, we do still have a few spots. Just type the letters DR down in the comments of the show, and I will send you over some details about that. But that first property was actually in the capital, and that was a long-term rental. The whole goal of that property was really to buy a property that would give long-term sustainable housing for locals, for those that are living here. It is not beachfront. It is not on Airbnb. That is not what we do with that property. But then now, a couple years later, it was time for us to be able to move forward with that property. This was my dream. This was why I got into real estate. I wanted to actually live abroad again. I lived abroad when I was younger, before I met my now husband. I used to live in Spain. I owned a tour company over there. I expanded into Portugal. I used to own a restaurant in Portugal. I owned a bus that took people between Spain and Portugal and back and forth. So my goal with real estate to be able to build this portfolio so I can move abroad again. Well, when the pandemic happened, I saw a little bit of an opportunity for that. It was, I think, fall of 2020. We had already been stuck inside in New York for so many months. We are very, very fortunate that we were okay from a health perspective. But I remember looking at like October, November in New York being like, it's getting cold, it's getting dark. I just remember saying there was no way I'm going to make it through winter being trapped inside. Talked to my husband about this. He was not really on board. I said, let's go, let's get out, let's go and, spend some time somewhere else. And I really couldn't kind of get him on board. So my trick for any woman out there that's trying to figure out how to get her partner on board, my husband's birthday is in December. So I decided for his birthday to pay for an Airbnb for the month of January down in the Dominican Republic. That was my gift to him, the thing that I wanted, but I gave it to him as a gift. I thought that would be a good way to be able to get what I wanted and show him what a great option it would be. So found an Airbnb, ended up coming down in January as planned. We stayed for the first month. We absolutely loved it and saw how easy it was for us to, one, manage our properties back in New York, to be able to still work, to be able to still run everything as if we were in New York, but just do it from a beach. So we actually ended up extending that stay. Instead of just staying for the month, we ended up staying for another 2 months and really lived out winter in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. During that time, we got to really learn a lot about how real estate worked down there. Because of that, and because we realized that this was something feasible that we could do, we started looking at options. We looked at a lot of options in the complex that we stayed in at that time, but we also went out and we looked at new construction. We looked at properties that were just about ready to be completed. We looked at properties that had been around for years. We looked at all those different options and we came across a few and we decided we wanted to make some offers. Now, this still took a little bit of time to kind of get through at that point, and one of it was still that proof of concept of if this was going to make sense for us to be able to sustainably come down every single year. But what really held up was the idea of how it fits into our portfolio. And this is why this property almost never happened. The property itself at that point in time that we were looking at was about $200,000. About $200,000. There are absolutely still ways to be able to finance properties here in the Dominican Republic. And we were able to do that with the property that we had bought previously in the capital. But because of that experience, we also learned how financing worked. And it was just something that we really didn't want to go down that route again. We were in a very fortunate position to have that capital ready to go. So we said, well, we can take that money and really just take that whole chunk of our savings, everything that was in there at that time, everything that we had worked towards, and put it down on that one property. But then we were really going to kind of have nothing left. That kind of erased a bit of our emergency fund. We already had about 7 or 8 properties, I think, around that point in time. So that was really kind of putting us in a bit of a precarious situation, to be honest. And as much as I hated it, it didn't make sense to do it. It didn't. It was something that I remember, I think we put an offer on one place. I think it was about $170,000. And I can't believe I'm going to say this now, but luckily, we didn't get it. And that made me say, we need to take a look back at our strategy. We need to take a look back at what we were looking to accomplish. What we were looking to accomplish was not living paycheck to paycheck. It was not having to go back to a place where we were having to completely rely on our day job to pay for all of our expenses. We wanted financial freedom. We wanted options. We wanted what they call FU money. Money that if I did not want to be working at my day job anymore, I could leave and I could be okay and I could still live. That if I was, God forbid, laid off, which I had been a couple years later, then we would be okay. If I just hated what I was doing and needed to change, we would be okay. This would have erased all of that. So like I said, I'm actually now looking back really grateful that we did not get that property. We sat down, my husband and I, and took a look at what we could do with that money and made different decisions. When we looked at that, one of the thoughts that I kind of said was, if we take that $200,000 here in the Dominican Republic, yes, we can buy my dream home. That'd be awesome. That's what I've always wanted. I can live out of the country. I could live in endless summer. It's exactly what I was looking for. But if we did that, I was taking $200,000 and buying a $200,000 asset, and it was erasing all of my other savings. Or we can go back to New York, take that $200,000 and purchase a $1 million asset by financing a property, right? 20% down, and being able to finance that property. And then taking that and having a consistent cash flow from it. And we would be able to roll that cash flow and have the asset pay for my dream home instead of us. That money took us a long time to save. That was something that we had to work for. That was something that we lived on a very low budget at that point in time. We watched our spending. We drove older cars. We didn't take extravagant vacations. Even us coming down to the Dominican Republic for those 3 months, that was something that we were really able to do on a budget because we were really in a place of needing to acquire more rentals to get to our space. It wasn't something that I just wanted to go and blow that money on in a place that was going to make it more difficult for me to also not have to have that full-time day job. So instead, that's what we did. We went back to New York. That would have been in early April of that year. And we said, okay, let's look at other rental properties with that funds. When we went back, the way that the real estate market had really changed, especially in New York, is I ended up buying that later that year, a smaller property. It was not that $1 million property that I wanted. It wasn't something that I ended up putting all the $200,000 into that down payment. But we were able to find a duplex that had a tenant that was there for like 30 years. I think this is their 30th year. They were there, maybe their 31st year this year, actually, now in 2026. They've been there forever. And they paid a lower rent because of that. But the other rent for the second unit was actually something that would really give us a good cash flow from it. I think on that, when I originally bought it, it brought in an extra $1,700 a month in profit from that. That was a great benefit, and I think that took out about 60,000 of that for the down payment from that $200,000 bucket that I had had. That money I did not spend. I took that about $2,000 a month and I put that right back into my down payment savings bucket. So now I have another asset that I was able to pick up, and that's now cash flowing, and I put that back in that bucket for that property. Next year, I still did not buy my dream property. I still said we need to be able to delay that gratification. So then that way, when we do buy that dream property and we do really kind of activate what I was looking to do in my life, live between the two countries, be work optional. When I was looking to do those things, it wasn't there with just that one property. I needed to wait till the next one. So I now had the $140,000 still left from what I had in my down payment savings bucket. I still was still saving money from my day job and my husband's day job. We were in a position because we had lowered our cost of living because of that house hack. We were saving about 80% of our income in that period of time. That was huge. I remember even my financial advisor was like shocked when he realized how much money we were actually saving into that account. So we were still growing that money from there. And then we also had that $2,000 a month coming in from that newest property, from solely that duplex there. That helped us really replenish and get to that $200,000 mark for that down payment savings bucket fairly quickly, I guess you could say. Once again, not overnight, definitely took a while, but all of those different income sources were still there. We didn't go out. We weren't buying new cars at that point. We weren't taking those vacations. We were solely saying, let's live the same lifestyle as we are now and continue to bank that money and put that aside. Then the following year, that's when I found that property. That's when I found a large 3-family home on the same block as 2 other multifamilies I own. So now I was able to pick up, I had a 4-unit there, a 2-unit there, and now I have a 3-unit there, and also have a parking lot all in that same intersection. So when that property came on, that was a fantastic pickup that I was able to still put that 25% down on that property because I had already replenished that large down payment savings bucket. That property was able to bring in great money. With that, if I'm able to bring in that $3,000 in addition from just that property alone, that made a huge difference in it. Now I was able to take the money from that duplex that I brought, the money that was going in from my savings here, and the money now from that 3-family. I was able to do all of those things with just that savings that I had of that $200,000. With that, by purchasing those other assets, I was able in 2023 to revisit the beach property. And now I was not doing it from a place where I felt like I was giving up all my savings, where I felt like then I wasn't going to be able to enjoy anything. I didn't feel like I was giving up my emergency fund because now, what would that have been? 2 years later, just 2 years later, I was in a position where the assets that I bought were going to be able to pay for my beachfront property. So then we came back in 2023, and I remember when we came back down in the Dominican Republic, we originally were renting still. We came back in 2022 and rented, and then in 2023 we rented. And I knew the exact complex I wanted to buy in. I knew the exact unit that I wanted to be able to buy in. And when we came down, I said to my husband, that's it. I am not going back to the United States until we find our dream beachfront property. And we did. We actually were in a position where we started looking for a 1-bedroom, as that was always the plan. And we happened to come across a fantastic opportunity with seller financing for a 2-bedroom in the exact complex that we wanted. And I was able to pick that up purely because I had the funds from the other rental properties coming in. So I'm really excited, and I wanted to share this with you because it's my own story of how I was able to leverage the properties I had, leverage the funds I had, and leverage the assets I had to pay for the dream home. Did it suck to have to delay for those 2 years? Yes, I was not excited for that, but it was only 2 years. Technically, if I just waited and just took the savings from the one property, from that first duplex of about $2,000 a month to be able to get back to that $200,000 that I would have needed, that would have taken me about 8 years to do that. 8 years in the scheme of life to have your dream home, your dream life, ain't that bad. The difference, though, is starting today. The longer you wait, yeah, that 8 years now is going to get delayed. But in this situation, luckily, I was able to really compound a couple of the different properties and leverage the capital that I had on hand to be able to speed up that delayed gratification and be able to buy my dream home in 2023. So I hope that just kind of gives you an idea about how to really take a step back and look at what your goals are and redefine where your strategy is in order for you to get whatever goal or dream or outcome that you are looking for from real estate investing. Hopefully, then you will also come down. I will be sharing more about the numbers and how that worked and how we are able to live for free here in the Dominican Republic half the year during our Dominican Republic property tour. So if you have an interest in joining us there or would like some more details, feel free to drop DR down in the comments and I will get you over the link. Hopefully there'll be still space out when I release this episode to be able to join us. It's going to be a really fun time. I'm so excited to show some women, some lady landlords around a country that I am so happy to call my second home. So thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Please do make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss next week's episode. We release new episodes every single Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining, and I will see you back in the Lady Landlords Facebook community soon.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.